Hello students. Now I'm going to talk about the very significant article or a text which is there in your this post-colonial literature, and this text is related to J M Coetzee. J M Coetzee is in your syllabus, and we are going to discuss about this. So this is one of the article which I am going to discuss, and this is a significant article. It will give you an idea, because the title of your article is it's apartheid thinking, and this is also one of the article written by J M Coetzee and the mind of apartheid, and we are talking about Geoffrey Coetzee. So I think you'll be able to understand it very well, and let us start. This is 1907. The Mind of Apartheid, Geoffrey Coetzee, 1907, and written by J M Coetzee. Geoffrey Coetzee was an influential figure in radical Afrikaner nationalist circle in 1940 and a seminal contributor to the theory of apartheid. His published writing of 1940 displayed a concern with race mixing that can properly be called obsessive. Where do obsessions such as Coetzee come from, and how do they spread themselves through the social body? Is a serious and productive analysis of the madness of apartheid possible, or is madness in a socio-historical context merely a metaphor? In what ways may historiography have to extend the terms of its discourse in order to take account of irrational forces of social life? This is very significant, and if you have any query, question, drop in the chat box, and we'll just try to discuss later on. And how this we have already talked about this madness, and this madness I have, you can find my article also on internet. If you just talk about apartheid and comparison of caste and race, there also I'm talking about this madness of history. So in England, 1688, said Daniel Defoe, there were men ready to go to war with popery without knowing whether the Pope was a man or horse. As I write in late 1990s, South African legislature are drafting measures to dismantle apartheid. It is not inconceivable that in the not too distant future, the major protagonist having agreed that apartheid has been dismantled, the era of apartheid will be proclaimed to be over. The unlovely creature will be laid to rest, and joy among nations will be unconfined. But what exactly is it that it will be buried? The more cautious among us may want to draw line between apartheid legislation, which can indeed be dismantled, apartheid practices which cannot be dismantled but can be combated, and apartheid thinking, which is likely to resist coercion as a thinking generally does. The sensible course of the future governments of South Africa to follow may be to concentrate on liquidating apartheid practices, on ignore apartheid thinking, allow the latter to lead whatever form to subterranean life in it choose, as long as it does not emerge in action, treating in fact very much as a sin in treat in modern secular societies. Unfortunately, thinking does not always remain in its own compartment. Thinking breeds action. There thus reason to reopen coffin and remind ourselves of what apartheid looks like in the flesh. Actually, we have to understand this thing very clearly, that the way caste system is there in India, and caste exists in the mind of the people. The way race existed in the minds of the people, in the same way caste is existing in the minds of the people. Until and unless this caste is going out of mind of the people, we cannot change anything, whatever rules, regulations, law, debate or awareness we generate. Until and unless people are ready to accept that, okay, the caste system is a bad system and we have to remove. So that's how we are also focusing on this race, which is also in the mind. So it's racial thinking, apartheid thinking. But what exactly it is that will be buried? The more cautious among, if there is an orthodoxy among historians of apartheid today, it is that apartheid was not different in nature from the policies and practices of segregation that preceded it. Furthermore, that apartheid legislation was by no means irrational response of social development and which threatened the expectations of Afrikaner, the privilege of white South Afrikaner in general, white liberals who diagnosed apartheid as a form of hubris and madness, and in terms of this reading, doing a little more than distracting attention from their continuing material complicity in exploitation of black labor. So that's how, in every exploitative system of the world, you will find that the labor of the deprived are used. If you see the patriarchy is using labor of women. If you see race, the whites are using labor of blacks. And if you see caste system, the upper caste, so-called upper caste, are using labor of untouchables and majority of the population. So that's how it's a exploitation of the black labor or the labor of the deprived and have-nots. But to call apartheid mad is by no means to imply that the liberal capitalist segregationism that preceded was sane. It may make more sense indeed to argue that both were mad. Rationality and economic or real self-interest do not have to be the same thing. The logic that makes apartheid sane because rational because governed by the self-interest deserve to be interrogated. How short-sighted does self-interest have to be before cease to be sane, and how much more short-sighted before it begins to be crazy? The theorists of apartheid justified their doctrine on the ground that it was in the long-term interest of white. Apartheid demands sacrifice, they said, but in the long term, such sacrifice would pay off. Like Poe's detective looking for the hidden letter in the most obvious places, we ought at least to concentrate possibility that was animated these worthies may have been not the altruism they claim, but on the contrary, their crescent absorption in their own passion and apartheid, that their utterances may have been a cover of the deepest indifference to the fate of their descendants. In this essay, I will be exploring the notion that man who invented and installed apartheid were possessed by demons. Trying to pin the blame or apartheid on someone else is fully realized a suspect maneuver for a middle-aged white South Afrikaner to be engaging in the pinning the blame on demons in sense pinning it nowhere at all. Scrupulous about casting the first stone should not, however, be allowed to paralyze the mind. If madness has a place in life, it has place in history too. So this statement is very significant. If madness has place in life, then it has a place in history too. The difference of South Africans' historiography to the question of madness and the tacit consensus in the social sense that while madness, like what used to be called the illegal Bantu, may be conceded to have a place in society that is ontologically a place apart, a non-place that does not entitle madness to a part in history, should arouse in us nothing but the deepest mistrust and cause us to read out rather than abate our efforts to call up, interrogate the demons of the past. As an episode in historical time, apartheid is overdetermined. It did indeed flower out of self-interest and greed, but it is also flower out of desire and of the hatred of desire. It is in its greed, it demanded black bodies in all their physicality. Remember, this statement is very powerful. It needs black bodies in their all physicality in order to burn up their energy as labor. Okay, remember this statement again. It in its greed, it demanded black bodies in all their physicality in order to burn up their energy as labor. And who will be using this labor? Who will be using getting the benefit of that labor is whites. So who is utilizing the labor of majority and STs in India? They are so-called upper caste. So who is utilizing the energy and physicality of women as a labor or as a body is patriarchy. So these are the systems which are so oppressive. It is in its anxiety about black bodies, it made iron laws to banish them. from sight. Its essence was therefore from the beginning confusion which displays all around itself, and this is what the significant thing, banishing them from public places. We see in caste system also, untouchables were banished from the public sphere. Untouchables were banished from the public sphere. Women are banished from market and areas. She is also been confined in the homes. So that's how banishing, controlling the area, controlling the space. That is what the system of exploitation, it has this strategy. And apartheid can indeed be studied empirically from the outside, but only to a limited extent. I write not as an historian but an literary scholar. The historical scholarship devoted to apartheid seemed to me to suffer from self-imposed limitations. Whether or not the historians or apartheid know what apartheid is, the kind of discourse and kind of thinking they elect to use as I read them make it impossible for them to write about more than the working of apartheid in the world. Theology has called apartheid a sin, not because it is crime of huge dimension. Crime are defined by the victor, and apartheid not has been a victor, but because it sets for itself the task of reforming, by which we should understand reforming the human heart. It is ultimately in the layer of the heart that apartheid must be approach. If we wish to understand apartheid, therefore we cannot ignore its testaments as it come down to us in the heart speech of autobiography or confession. This is what we have to see, how these exploitative systems are in the hearts of the people. Cunningly they think they want to utilize the resources of women, of untouchables, of majority, and that's how they use the labor. So that's how we have to see the mind. And if it is there, caste system is there in the mind, race is there in the mind, patriarchy is there in the mind, and what is the hidden agenda? The hidden agenda is to utilize the labor of these marginalized. Okay, that's how. So no biography, nowhere you will find that this is confessional autobiography, or people are accepting, yes, we are shrewd people, systematically we made those systems to exploit the labor and physicality of untouchables, of women, of blacks. So nobody is confessing, but it is there. It is in this spirit that I approach the writing of Geoffrey Coetzee. I treat them as a confession, not a repentant confession, far from it, but as a confession of belief, all the more revealing of the being full of ignorance and madness. In this old-fashioned innocence, Coetzee allows himself to fall into the delirium of writing with a lack of reserve quite. He is somewhere revealing unconsciously, foreign to his successors, to the academic bureaucratic castle he helped to build. In that delirium we catch glimpses of the apartheid nakedly occupied in thinking itself out, but we can share these glimpses if we read the text, follow the raving from the inside, if we inhabit with the part of ourselves. Coetzee posing as a writing subject, that is to say, in writing Coetzee, we must make an effort of projection, listening closely to what we say, even more closely to what he does not say, is afraid of saying. Above all, we must be sensitive to his language. So what Coetzee is trying to say here, we have to understand what Coetzee is not saying, and unconsciously he's revealing his intentions, that yes, we have to implement a system of apartheid where we can utilize the labor and the bodies of the blacks. So that's how. So we generally say read between lines. That's how Coetzee is trying to bring out this reality from his writing. And yes, so what Coetzee does not address in his text, what he repudiates it even in a desire of mixture. Around mixture his mind obsessively turn. What is mixture? Rather than try to pin the concept down, I have consciously preferred to allow it to float in its endlessly attractive and endlessly repulsive allure, itself a self-contradiction, itself a mixture. In its mixture and desire for mixing, that is the secret enemy of Geoffrey Coetzee and the Knights of Apartheid, the baffling force that must be thwarted, imprisoned, shut away. Apartheid is many things, a mixture of things, one of the thing, it is a scheme to make impossible for desire to mix to find fulfillment. Though this essay is about Geoffrey Coetzee, my concern in the end of this not with Coetzee himself, who is figured of no great stature, but with his madness and with the question of how madness spread itself. It's mad to spread through the social body. More generally, it is with reinsertion of madness into history. A word about organization of essay in section 21 situated Coetzee's in ethnic national movement in the moment of the 1930s and 40s, to whose doctrine he contributed so significantly. In section 31, in 3, I outline his writing of period from 1945 to 48, in which a near complete scheme of a society reorganized on the basis of apartheid is presented and justified as a salvation of Afrikaner walk. In section 4, I isolated desire and control of desire as Coetzee's central concern and analyzed apartheid. I think this is 31, 41, and 51. And a particular form of obsessiveness underlying his social prescription. In second 51, discuss the problem of conceptualizing the spread of irrational thought in the social body of integration madness into historical exploitation. Geoffrey Coetzee, career and reputation. Geoffrey Coetzee was a professor, okay, and he was writing, and that's how out of his writings, all of his writings, it has been taken. This idea of apartheid was formulated. So Geoffrey Coetzee was born in the Cape province in 1907. After graduating from the University of Stellenbosch in 1929, he followed other nationalistic including young Afrikaner intellectuals, Germany and Netherlands. Whence he returned fully of enthusiasm for the goals of methods of parties of European rights. Contemporaries of his among this elite include H.F. Verwoerd, Nico Diedrich and Piet Meyer. Returning with a doctrine in sociology and criminology from the University of Amsterdam, he was hired by the University of Pretoria in 1933. In 36, he became professor of sociology, and position he held till his retirement. As a political activist, Coetzee presented the pro-Nazi pan-Dutch student born in breakaway from the National Union of South African Students in 1933 and helped found the Afrikaner National Student Bond. Invited to join the Afrikaner border bond, he became a leading figure in its policy forming deliberation. During the 1930s, the border bond had given its energies to cultural politics and to plight of endless poor whites. But with a wartime economic boom generating large-scale black migrations to the cities, the border bond began intensive internal discussions of the plans of radical racial segregation of self-government African Reserve. The doctrine later publicly by Coetzee, and then these are the discussions. Starting from 1945, these are the books which are so significant, and this one book is Afrikaner, 1945 Afrikaner. Afrikaner Sonder dies, that is Africa without Asia. Then in 46, 47, and then 48. So these are the, though he continued to publish steadily afterwards, his reputation by far most articulate and theorist of apartheid rest on these books, which D.F. Malan drew heavily for his election manifesto. Furlong calls rig verdicts arrest parties. One of the most important books on apartheid ideology was Judgment of the Mark and Trapio. Coetzee's book given the most comprehensive theoretical statement of apartheid we have right now. So this is what we have to understand, and we'll continue this video.